Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good, Jamie. How are you, man?
I'm good. There's a lot of new gaming news to talk about. Not much of it's Activision stuff. I've been mainly enjoying gaming in general, which I think, when it comes to podcasts, we should talk about. Um, have you been playing anything interesting lately?
Yeah, matter of fact, I've been it's an older game, but it's new to me. It's Power Slave Exhumed. It's a I'm playing the remaster from Night Dive Studios, who they're phenomenal. Like them and Blue Point are like the pinnacle of remasters and Capcom and stuff like that. They're doing an awesome job. It's a 90s game that like think Doom and Quake from that era, but mixed with ancient Egyptian mythology and aliens. And it's crazy, but I love it. And there's a lot of roguelite elements, like going back and forth, or Metroidvania elements. And you just collect your gear and try to fight off this invasion and undead horde. And it's a lot of fun. It's Series X enhanced. And yeah, so that's what I've been playing and been really enjoying it.
Nice. Yeah, I've mainly been playing Hogwarts Legacy because like that game just keeps on going. I think a lot of people listening and anyone in general that's just been playing that. It's sold over 12 million copies, which we talked about last week. But as the game gets going on, the game's just getting better. It's always introducing new gameplay mechanics, new types of puzzles. The puzzles in this game are very easy to figure out. There's hundreds of challenges throughout the map which you have to solve. It's just a very well done RPG. And Logan, before Hogwarts Legacy, can you remember what was the last major third party RPG?
Like from a licensed game,
Just in
or
general, a general third party big RPG, AAA third person RPG.
Cyberpunk? Would that be it?
That's first person, but we'll go with Cyberpunk because I was thinking like everyone's loving Hogwarts Legacy, but I'm looking at my shelf and I'm like, it's been years since we've had like a big RPG. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's the only reason why it's popular, but bloody hell, it's amazing. A lot of people have messaged us like saying that they are getting into the Harry Potter universe just because of this game. And I know you said you're not into Harry Potter, but like you'd love this game. Everything's explained like to newbies basically, like what spells are, everything in the world, what it means. And it's just cool. And I think one of the big things about it is its world. I've never seen a game with a detailed area like Hogwarts itself. The castle is filled with puzzles and just life, people walking around, there's ghosts chasing each other and stuff. There's these suits of armor throughout the entire castle that will just like fight each other sometimes. It's just a fun game, and I think another big draw to it is the seasons. There's multiple different seasons in the game, and as you're going through the different chapters, the seasons progress. And I finally got to where autumn is in the game, and you had all these orange leaves and stuff, very much what the English countryside looks like. But after saving maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks worth of days, it got to Halloween, and there was pumpkins all over Hogwarts, which kind of just added to the vibe. And I think that's something that really added to it, because like we don't get changing seasons in RPGs. Like in smaller ones, like Stardew Valley and stuff, you do, but not in like a big AAA game. It's something I hope we see in Fable, because like once you have like seasons like this, completely changes how the map looks. Like every few months in the game, it's just really good. Do you think you'll pick it up at all?
Yeah, I'll pick it up down the road. I've got my eyes on some other stuff right now, but it's one I do have a lot of interest in because I'm a RPG junkie, especially medieval lore type stuff anyway. So the idea of, castles and wizards and, dragons and all that stuff, yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
Nice. And we have some news about Hogwarts Legacy, other than the fact that it's selling really well, which is good to see. I always have seen a single player game do this well, but The Xbox One and PlayStation 4 version's been pushed to May, so it's been delayed twice. I've seen a lot of people say online that they should just cancel it. I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. They'll probably just, make less foliage, because this game's filled with foliage, and foliage can tank hardware. It could be very taxing. But like, this game's going to sell like 20 million copies by the end of the summer, probably. It's going to be huge. I don't know how it's going to look on Switch, because it's not a cloud version apparently, and it's going to be like the full version. But yeah.
Don't tell the CMA.
Yeah, the CMA will be angry. But the cool thing is that the devs kind of hinted that they're going to get towards DLC, because people are wanting DLC for this game. And there were things apparently cancelled like years ago. Apparently Quidditch was originally in the game. And things like walking around at night and trying to avoid, like teachers, because you're not meant to walk around Hogwarts on a night. Well, that's not a thing in this game. You can walk around at night, other than the library. But I think like the way that tweet was worded is that we are going to see expansions. That game is doing too well. It's too big to not do expansions. So they need to get out the last gen versions, and then they can get onto DLC. And for a lot of big games, we don't see DLC maybe 6 months or longer after release. Hell, it's been a year since Elden Ring, and we're still waiting for the release of the expansion, which they just announced. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a while, so keep your saves, and yeah. Oh, and by the way, I've seen a lot of people recently discover this. It's a big thing that if you're on the main menu of Hogwarts Legacy, settings and delete save is the same button. So
that's terrifying.
Yeah. So if you press Y in the main menu, it's delete. It's settings. But if you have the cursor over your save, it deletes your save. So it's like it's a bit bad. They shouldn't have done that. It's obviously an error which they can easily fix in a patch. But yeah, if you're playing on console with a controller, be extremely careful that you don't delete your save. I've seen clips already on Twitter of people losing the save. Like, I've already put like 30 hours into the game. I wouldn't want to lose 30 hours in an RPG. I don't need that. Anyway, we'll move on. So there was a game announced last year at the Game Awards. Oh no, it was actually Gamescom. It's called Atlas Fallen. It had a very cool 2-minute long CGI trailer, but at the very end, and Focus Entertainment do this with games, that they have like 10 seconds of gameplay. And it looked incredible. It looks like a Western take on the Monster Hunter formula. And we've had no information on this ever since, up until about 2 days ago, where we got about 8 screenshots. It looks amazing. We're getting a gameplay trailer soon, and the game releases at the end of May. And I'll say this, just off the screenshots and what I've read on the blurb so far, it's a day one purchase. Focus Entertainment, they do not put out bad games, or at least for the past few years. Have you seen this at all, Logan? Because it does actually look pretty good.
Yeah, I have. This is founded by former BioWare devs, right?
I think some are involved, yeah.
Yeah, this one looks really good, and if it's anything like their, pedigree or like Monster Hunter, yeah, I'm definitely checking it out.
Yeah, and one of my biggest things with Monster Hunter, and Monster Hunter Rise is in Game Pass right now. I always find bloated UIs distasteful. Like, they really put me off. Like, my brain shuts off and it looks like Matrix code to me. And I don't know why. It's just gone on for years. I played Monster Hunter World for maybe like 30 hours when it came out, and I just stopped playing because I hit a wall. Monster Hunter Rise, I really want to get back into it, but the UI is... It's not that good, in my opinion. The UI is very atrocious. Wild Hearts, very minimalist compared to this. But yeah, Atlas Fallen, if you want a Western Monster Hunter style game, it looks like you're going to be getting that with this. It's also a 2-player co-op if you want, and that's a next-gen only game. So it's going to be pushing next-gen hardware. It's going to have like sand dunes and stuff that interact with the environment. Again, we're getting a gameplay trailer soon. I can't wait. And Logan, you want to talk about this. Halo Infinite Season 3 just drops. I don't play Halo Infinite multiplayer because, one, I'm crap, and 2, I don't really touch multiplayer at the minute. So Logan, this is all you because I know you like your Halo multiplayer.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say on it this time. I haven't jumped in myself yet for season 3, but just thought we'd mention it since it launched today. But if you have Halo Infinite installed, you're gonna get a big update. Like I think mine was, yeah, it was like 10 plus gigs, so it's a pretty sizable update. And new mission or there's new modes of multiplayer. There's several new maps. There's a new gun, the Bandit, and just a whole bunch of tweaks and UI differences and Forge stuff. So it's an opportune time with a new season and new content added to jump back in if you have been having that itch for Halo again, or if you had been waiting until they finally got their act together and had more maps and new weapons and stuff. Well, now's the time to jump in. It's Things are going well. I know the Halo news cycle has not been exactly positive as of late, but this is a good sign.
Yeah, I mean the reception I'm seeing online is positive. There was a spike in users on Steam and on Twitch, so it's looking good. Like again, I don't play multiplayer because I just stopped for some reason last generation. But yeah, it looks like people are getting really involved with Halo again. I think the pandemic and all that stuff, and obviously affected the game's development. But it looks like 343, they're really getting like the gears moving now. And even though it has been a while since it's launched, you can't put them down for putting out good content. And what people are liking right now is good content in the game. So that's what's important. And a lot of the cool maps, from what I've seen, look good. They look really good. There's even new armor pieces that change color depending on what your visor looks like, which is really cool. I may actually have to give Halo another shot because, again, the last time I was properly into multiplayer was Titanfall. That was 2014. I got involved in Halo 5 multiplayer because I loved the Warzone Firefight and Breakout. I thought Breakout was an amazing mode for Halo. But ever since then, I've just not been a part of multiplayer at all. I miss the good old COD days. I'm not going to reminisce about the past again because I know that can annoy some people, but damn, I miss those days. But yeah, again, it's like 20 plus gigs or 23 gigs. Thanks, Hacky Sacked in chat. It's 23 gigabytes on Xbox. Not really that big, considering games now can be upwards of 40, 50, 60, 100 gigabytes. Atomic Heart a few weeks ago was like 60 something gigabytes, and then we got a patch the next day that was 67 gigabytes. So it's like, it's not that big, Anyway, we'll move on. I'm just going to get straight into the Square Enix stuff because I've got some words for Square. If you like Japanese RPGs, chances are you like me, you grew up playing Square Enix games or Squaresoft, Final Fantasy, even their Western games, Deus Ex, Tomb Raider, Hitman at the time. They put out really good games. People loved their stuff. And over the years, they were putting out less games that people liked, and they were favouring different consoles for, exclusivity and stuff. And it's understandable why people get annoyed because people want more games on the platform. And anyway, so it turns out that the president of Square Enix is going to step down at the end of the year and someone else is taking charge. And this person is heavily in favour of NFTs.
Of course they are.
Yeah, of course they are. That thing in 2023 that people always talk about. And, the NFTs crashed last year. Like, people probably saw the FTX thing in the news. It was worldwide news because like billions of dollars were lost. Like people's money just gone, blip, out of nowhere. And some of that was in NFTs and things like NFTs. And like I do not like I'll say this right now, no matter how big this channel gets or whatever, I will never peddle NFTs. That will never be a thing. I think it's stupid. Like Dr. Disrespect, one of my favorite streamers. He's an entertaining guy because he does the whole 80s thing, which I really like. And he's peddling NFTs. And it's like, we spent how many years complaining about microtransactions? 17 years, horse armor, right? People have been complaining for that long for microtransactions. And think about it. we are meant to be okay all of a sudden with microtransactions the moment we could possibly get money in return. That's stupid. We aren't going to make money. Like, how is a billion-dollar corporation or million-dollar company going to offer us gamers the way of earning money? That doesn't make any sense, because it literally devalues their own products, putting out these little bits of things that they can, sell at a small amount, and then, gamers can get a big return. Because we saw this with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Ubisoft stopped supporting the game. So people were buying these NFTs in Ghost Recon that didn't move to any of the game. People couldn't sell them on because nobody had any reason to buy them. So people just had these useless items that meant nothing. And as someone that played Ghost Recon Breakpoint for a while, items literally made no difference in that game, right? You would find loot constantly. So buying something off a store with like a number 7 on makes no sense. And by the way, if you want to play Ghost Recon Breakpoint, you can. None of that stuff is forced. It's a perfectly good game if you want to do the whole stealth tactic thing. And like, nobody wants NFTs. Let's face it. Like, they don't offer anything of value. Because here's the thing. I've talked about skins in the past, and like, I don't understand how people want their first-person shooter character to look. Because this is just me. I can only see my hands in a first-person shooter, so I always just go with the default option. I just don't care. So, like, I'm going to buy something to possibly sell in the future. Like, digital ownership for an item in a game is stupid. Let's be honest. It's stupid. Nobody wants it. Like, Logan, have you ever played a game and thought, this hat? I want to own this hat in this game and maybe sell it on?
Yeah, that has never crossed my mind at all. Like, the only NFT idea I ever thought was theoretically cool, but it was, not grounded in reality, was the idea of, like, if you own a skin or owned an item that you could somehow transfer it to other games and stuff like that. But that's not even feasible or realistic because, like, for example, Epic makes Fortnite. If you bought something in Fortnite, you shouldn't expect to be able to use it in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which is made by Ubisoft, completely different experiences, engines, etc. So the whole, like, if there was stuff like that, maybe you could have a conversation, but for me, it's null and void and just kind of monotonous.
Yeah, I mean, like, Mike Sonoda from Linkin Park on Twitter last year posted the idea of, wouldn't it be cool to buy something in one game, like a skin, and then use it in a different game? Like, let's say you buy an Ezio outfit in Call of Duty, or maybe you can play a different game with that same skin. It's like, realistically, that doesn't make sense. It'll never happen because, like you're saying, all these games use different engines, different versions of each engine. Like, all versions of Unreal Engine aren't the same. You have games in Unity, you have games in proprietary engines, so like that will never happen. Like, in an ideal world where my house is made of chocolate, it makes sense, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. And like, seeing these people try and peddle these NFTs, like, nobody cares. I remember when horse armor was introduced in Oblivion, people lost it online. And you know what that horse armor did in that game? Nothing. Did nothing. It didn't protect your horse from, like, being hurt. Didn't do any of that stuff. It was just visual. And ever since, we've hated microtransactions, and now they want to peddle us the opportunity to make a return. No, not on my watch. Not happening. And like, I hope Dr. Disrespect's first-person shooter, bit of a tangent, I hope it does well, because I think people need more variety, but like, we don't need it. And to see Square Enix fall so hard, it's sad. It's sad. They sell off their Western division basically for $300 million, and then Embracer license out Tomb Raider for $600 million. Beautiful, by the way. I love the fact that they doubled their money overnight off a licensing ship. Beautiful move by Embracer. And, by the way, we're still going to see those Tomb Raider games on Xbox, and on PlayStation as well, so no worries there. And it's just a shame. And then, you were saying just before the show, Square Enix, they're complaining about the lack of reach for Final Fantasy. and how like Final Fantasy has like a small user base is what they used to have, and it's like no crap, Sherlock. Like you're limiting your game sales to one platform. Like how many PlayStation 5s are out in the wild? 30 million, and then it's not going to be on PC for another 6 months, and then maybe Xbox will get it. It's like, and how much of the PlayStation audience want to buy a Final Fantasy game? It might be a lot, but the proof's in the pudding. They keep complaining about the same thing over and over and over again. I remember when Tomb Raider came out in 2013. Magnificent game. The game cost about 100 million to make, and they spent like $120 million on marketing the title. They spent more on marketing a Tomb Raider game than the game itself. Tomb Raider is a household name. I remember, by the way, where I live, Durham, a small city, there were buses going past constantly with massive Tomb Raider posters on the side. And it's like, that's expensive. And that's in Durham, a small city, you know, in England. Like, they shouldn't have been doing that. Everyone knows about Tomb Raider. And they were spending all this money that made no sense. They screwed over the Deus Ex franchise by forcing the developers to... So basically, in Deus Ex Human Revolution, every time you finished a mission, you'd get a Praxis kit. And you'd be able to level up a certain ability. Really cool, right? But in the sequel, Mankind Divided, Square Enix forced them to sell Praxis kits in the store. And you weren't getting Praxis kits every time you finished missions anymore. Disgusting. Like, Logan, did you ever play that game?
I haven't played the sequel, no. I played the first one, though.
And it's terrible. And it's like, Square Enix does all these stupid moves. And that was basically the beginning of, hey, if you buy this special edition of a game, you can get it 4 days early. But Square Enix took it to another level of shady, right? They basically had a tier list of, based on how many pre-orders they had, you would get X amount of rewards. So let's say 2 million pre-orders would mean you get an exclusive skin for the sniper rifle. And then if there was 4 million pre-orders, you get an extra piece of DLC and a few Praxis kits, right? And it went all the way up. I'm just guessing it was like 10 million pre-orders or something. And if they got 10 million pre-orders, the game would release 2 weeks early. Absolute shadiness. And that's Square Enix for you. Like, thankfully, Eidos Montreal, they're in better conditions now. And the thing is, I loved Human Revolution. It's an incredible RPG, but you can tell Square Enix, they really hurt that sequel. While I think it's a decent game, it's not a patch on the original, unfortunately. And by the way, I don't think the cyberpunk genre works in Europe because all of our buildings are ancient. But that's a story for another day. And, you know, Final Fantasy VII would be a household... Well, it is a household name. But I'm going to ask chat. If Final Fantasy VII Remake, hypothetically, came to Xbox, would you buy it? No Game Pass.
Day one, Steelbook, everything.
Yeah, no Game Pass question. Would you buy it? Like, I would. I played Crisis Core Reunion. I got it for Christmas. And I loved that game. In my opinion, I may have to think on it. I think Crisis Core Reunion may actually be my favorite Final Fantasy game ever. It was incredible. It was a Final Fantasy game that took 20 hours to finish. Mwah, amazing. You never see that in JRPGs, but I loved it. And like when the credits rolled and it plays the opening cutscene for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I swear to God, salt start pouring from me. I was like, how dare you say to be continued? Like, how dare you do this? And you know, at the end it said to be continued in Final Fantasy VII. It didn't say remake. So like, okay, I'll fire up the pixelated version or the polygonal version that I've got installed on the hard drive. But like, and I do recommend Crisis Core to people. It's genuinely a good game in itself. But like, Final Fantasy VII would sell millions. Like, people like to joke about Xbox gamers not buying stuff, but like, Final Fantasy VII would sell. That's a fact. It would sell. Literally everyone and their mother and their dog and cat knows of that title. And, you know, who knows, maybe we'll see those games down the line on Xbox at some point, and we will talk about the exclusivity stuff with Sony later on in the show, but it's a shame. Like Square Enix, they just keep shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again. And like, look at Forspoken. Like, I'm not talking about whether people like the game or not. Like, that game is 2 years exclusive to PlayStation. Now, in general, that game is going to suffer because of that, because they've missed the marketing hype cycle for a major release. So when a Xbox version does hypothetically get made, it's going to have next to no marketing budget, because that's how these ports work. Whenever you see a late port announced for a title, there's next to no marketing for it. There never is. And Square Enix just being Square Enix. Like, Logan, I know you and I are both fed up of Square Enix doing these things and complaining about the lack of sales of titles, but it's getting ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, it's madness. I mean, Square Enix just perpetually comes off as like you all know at least one person in your life that is just never happy about anything. Nothing is ever good enough. Like it could be perfect, like to the nth degree. Everything, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. Just like everything is the way it should be, and it's still not good enough. That is Square Enix. They have this insane notion about these things, and then they have the audacity to throw other people and other things under the bus for not reaching their absurd notions on something that's not even possible with the way they do their business. And it's just incredibly frustrating and irritating, and to have the audacity and the you think kind of mindset of, man, Final Fantasy's not reaching as many people as we hope. I wonder why. How could we fix this? I'm like, well, I can think of a few ways you could do that, but and then like they apparently don't like the classifying as a JRPG now. Like I saw that earlier too. That apparently they're having the creator of Final Fantasy or somebody was saying they didn't like the classification of JRPG anymore. And so there's just a whole bunch of just weird stuff going on with Square. And if you wanted a tinfoil hat conspiracy, you could say almost like, man, it's almost like they're just tanking to sell off. I don't think that's what they're doing, but they're certainly doing something weird.
Yeah, I mean, Square Enix being weird doesn't surprise me, but like somehow they do. They just make more bad decisions and say bad things, and like who knows why they're doing it. It's just weird, and it's a shame because Square Enix used to make some amazing games, and that JRPG thing, by the way, wow. I was only briefed on that last night, and like JRPG means something. Like it mean like you know what you're getting with a JRPG. It's not offensive in any way. Like some of my favorite games of all time are JRPGs. Like if I were to show you, I don't know, let's say Lost Odyssey, for instance, like and say, oh, it's just an RPG. You could think it's anything. Is it a CRPG? Is it first person, third person, whatever JRPG? If you say JRPG, you know what you're getting. You're getting either turn-based or action-based combat. You're having an over-exaggerated story with overly over-the-top exposition, because that's what you get with, JRPGs. It's the same with anime. But, like, you know what you're getting into. You love that stuff. And people buy JRPGs for that reason. And the thing is, there's people that only buy JRPGs. So when they see that slapped on like the box or, reviews or whatever, it entices them. And there's developers that have told me, Western developers, by the way, that they've aimed to make a JRPG. But no matter what they do, they will never have their game described as JRPGs. Just because they're from a different country. Like, I've been told that. Like, hint, hint, a French developer. And like, there's nothing bad about JRPGs. I remember as a kid reading in, I think it was Games Master magazine, like, articles about JRPGs coming out and how many look good. Like, nobody ever thought anything bad about JRPGs. I did see that clip from X-Play. X-Play and G4 wasn't a thing in the UK, by the way.
Oh yeah, that was cringe. But
yeah.
the other,
yeah, like that stuff was never broadcast in the UK back in the day. But like, wow. Like UK, by the way, UK television for gaming stuff in the late 90s was literally just people going head to head in front of a crowd. That's pretty much it, and talking about new releases. But like, yeah, that was a bit cringe. But outside of that, like JRPGs, that's something to be proud of. Like, if I were to say, "Oh, I'm making an RPG," it could be anything, you know. That was just a weird comment. I think people will just look past it in the end. But yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. And plus, by the way, that is not an offensive thing, JRPG. Do you know what is a bad thing? That is a term gamers use around the world. A term I've heard reviewers use. Eurojank. Eurojank is a term that gets used for European RPGs all the time. The LX games were called Eurojank. The Witcher 3, when that first came out, was called Eurojank. Now, it's one of the highest regarded RPGs of all time, but it was still called Eurojank, and that is a legitimate bad term in my opinion. It's awful. I hate that term, Eurojank. But yeah, that was a weird thing to say. Yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah, it sounds. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying we'll move on. But like, you have to admit, the Eurojank thing is way worse than JRPG.
Yeah, for sure.
Like The Witcher 3, like it still boggles my mind to this day. Like The Witcher 3 is incredible. It's a masterpiece, and people are calling it Eurojank. Anyway, we'll move on. Before I move on to the next topic, about half an hour into the show, if you're enjoying it, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Hit that bell for notifications because I've got videos coming out soon, and that's tomorrow. If you want to do super chats to support the channel, if you want anything read out, that's all appreciated. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, Take Two. Take Two is laying off staff. It's been happening with all these different game companies. Microsoft's been laying off people. I think Nintendo let people go late last year. It's a thing that happens in the industry. However, Logan, you want to talk about them for a very specific reason.
Yeah, apparently they're not being sold for pennies on the dollar. I know that's shocking to everybody that is well astute and informed on the gaming industry, but for some reason there had been this idea floating around that Sony was going to get a sweetheart deal on Take-Two, who had just bought a massive mobile publisher themselves, Zynga, for a pretty substantial amount of money. So the idea that they would buy them, who just bought Zynga, and they'd get this whole sweetheart package on pennies on the dollar was ludicrous. And then Jason Schreier, basically, he emerged and he turned his attention to the origin of this rumor, and he just absolutely ethered the person out of existence. It was insane. So don't go spreading rumors and fake news online, or the journalist will find you.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, ever since Microsoft bought, like, Bethesda, like, the whole topic's been, like, who should Sony buy? Who should Nintendo buy is never a question, by the way. It's always who Sony should buy. And, when Microsoft went after Activision, and we'll be talking about that in a bit, like, it went from, hey, buying a publisher is bad, they shouldn't do this, to who should Sony buy? So it's like, it's no longer a bad thing because Sony should do it. And it's like, Take-Two, I'd argue to say Take-Two would be a bigger get because of how big Grand Theft Auto is. Like, I think no one could acquire Take-Two purely based on how big GTA is. Like, GTA is a phenomenon. It charts in the top 10 every single week, and it came out 10 years ago. Like, it's been a while, and GTA is an infamous title. GTA Vice City, best game soundtrack of all time in my opinion. But like, those games sell. Like, it's gonna pass probably 200 million copies by the time the next one comes out. And it just seems like Take-Two is always this target. It's like, if there's no gaming news, we're going to talk about GTA 6. Although there was that one like a few months ago, which we can't legally really talk about because Take-Two's been a bit weird with claiming stuff. But here's the thing. These fake Sony insiders, and not doing themselves any good. It's happened over and over again. Hey, right, remember this? Sony have a new announcement show in September. September came and went, and then people start saying it was going to be October, then November, then December, then January. And it's like, it's this endless cycle of fake news, right? I hate using the term fake news. It makes me sound like a politician. But, like, it was awfully cringe. Like, who honestly believes all these Sony insiders? Like, I hate the term insider, by the way. And I've broke stuff. I broke Hellblade was coming to Xbox at 5 a.m, like months before it was announced. Crash Bandicoot coming to Xbox, bunch of crap. I would never consider myself an insider. I just know where to look. And these people were just making up crap. Because what's that saying? A broken clock is right twice a day. And that's what they're doing. They're making up these outlandish claims, hoping that if one will stick. Like, if you make 20 outlandish claims, there's a chance that maybe one of them may come true at some point. And at that time, they can come out and say, hey, look, I was right. They can subtweet themselves, take a screenshot of their past tweet and say, hey, look at me, told you so. That's what people like to do on Twitter, by the way. I like to told you so, and, he's this horrible person replying, but, like, that's a thing. And, like, Sony's not going to buy Take-Two. Nobody's going to buy Take-Two. If anything, Tencent could try. I doubt it would happen, but yeah, that was a weird situation. Nobody's buying Take-Two, and I don't think Sony will buy any publisher. I don't think they'll try. They'll just go for more exclusivity, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I think the whole anyone buying a publisher thing is done. I don't think we're going to see anyone buy any publisher at all ever again. At least for the next decade. Like, Logan, could you imagine going through this whole thing again?
Yeah, the only way I see a publisher happening again is if it is a smaller publisher and or a publisher that is in a foreign market where there is maybe some less stringent regulations and focus involved. Because, like it or not, agree with them or not, certain administrations have changed in the last few years since the Bethesda deal across the world, not just in America, like across the world. And there seems to be a real desire for saber rattling and going after big tech just simply because it is tech. And tech bad, so we must purge and destroy and rein it in. And we screwed up in the past because we didn't know what we were doing. And now we just got to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so we're just going to really take it to this company. Even when this company hasn't had problems for like 20 plus years, they've been model citizens in their industry. So I don't see big publisher acquisitions coming anytime soon. If there was one, I'm throwing this out purely as a hypothetical. This is not a report. This is not a whatever. Like, theoretically, if there was like a Japanese publisher or something down the line where Xbox has really been needing a presence, to maybe something like that, or like a smaller European one, but nothing ever again on the scale of Activision or a Take-Two or an EA. Something like that. I think it's been way too much a pain in the rear for them to deal with. And I frankly don't think they want to go through that again. Until there is a change in climate, or if this is just the way it's going to be, then I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about how much I like Focus Entertainment, and the reason I think that would be a horrible purchase for Microsoft, and bear in mind, I talk about Focus Entertainment all the time. I pretty much advertise for them multiple times a day on Twitter because I think the games they publish are great. Focus Entertainment don't actually own any studios. They just work with independent developers. They license them out, they help advertise them, and then they publish them. That's how they make money. And, they did that with Atomic Heart, A Plague Tale, Hard Space Shipbreaker, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is coming out this year, Aliens Dark Descent, Atlas Fallen. They are putting out some really cool games this year, but they don't own developers. So, like, Microsoft buying them seems cool if you first think about it, but when you get down to it, it wouldn't make any sense. And plus, I don't want Microsoft to go through this all again. It's tiring. And if anything, I think Microsoft should work with the publisher, because, like, again, Focus Entertainment, like, a lot of their games have launched in Game Pass. Hard Space Shipbreaker, Plague Tale Requiem, and Atomic Heart all launched on Game Pass. And I think they would probably be a good publisher to work with when it comes to Game Pass deals, because, Sony's paying other developers to not put games on Game Pass. So, again, we're going to be talking about that in a bit. I think they should go that way. And anyway, we'll move on because, publisher talk can get a bit long in the tooth. Okay, so yesterday, Paradox Interactive had their new gaming show hosted, or I should say sponsored by Xbox, where they announced a bunch of new stuff, a bunch of new expansions. Some of it's coming to Xbox. One of them things being let me find the name. Crusader Kings 3, the new expansion, that's coming to Xbox. It was very much a PC-centric game, but we're getting that. A new title was announced. It's called The Lamplighters League. It's a 1930s XCOM-style game. Looks pretty cool, in my opinion. And that's coming to Xbox Game Pass this year, which is pretty cool. But the big title, which they closed the show on, and they kept it kind of brief. It was a very small gaming event. Was City Skylines 2. Now, you might think that's a bit of a niche title. That's had over 25 million players. Like, it's a huge title. They said it's like 8 years old. It's hard to believe it's that old. And the cool thing about it is that it's next-gen only. A lot of the big problems people had with City Skylines is that you couldn't have absolutely massive cities or multiple cities because of the RAM issue. And that won't be a thing on these new consoles. So we're possibly going to see, like, the ability to have multiple connecting cities, because they're hitting that in the trailer with highways and stuff between cities. So it looks like possibly we're going to be able to build bigger cities at a bigger level with more interactivity. And the City Skylines fan base on Twitter lost their mind. Personally, I haven't gotten into it because I think the tutorial didn't explain certain things properly. I will give the remaster a try because it's now available on Game Pass. But yeah, cool announcement. I think it's going to be a big game. That game is also launching day one on Xbox Game Pass. It's actually a big deal. You might think City Skylines is niche. It really isn't. Logan, what's your thoughts? Because I know you like the whole Paradox thing.
Yeah, Paradox seems to be a publisher that Xbox has partnered with for Game Pass announcements, like EA and others, and I think it's smart. Like, why not work with one of the best developers of those type of genres that you don't have a lot of on your console? And it helps, prop up PC Game Pass as well. And City Skylines 2 in particular is a big get because the first one was very, very popular. I'm excited for the Lamp League game. That looks really fun. I love XCOM style stuff. So, yeah, all in all, I think it was a good show, and it shows more diversity for Game Pass, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah, like you were saying, they need more PC-centric stuff for Game Pass, so that's a big win. And honestly, I think it was a fairly decent show. It was clearly a smaller show. It was meant to be. Paradox is a small publisher, but like City Skylines 2 was a huge announcement. That's going to be big when that comes out. And yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be happy with that because I'm all for variety on the console. Like, I want as many JRPGs and PC-centric games. Although they did show off an RTS filled with mechs. And I got all excited, and there was no Xbox logo at the end. And I'm like, that's another PC RTS we're not getting. They showed something cool off with mechs, and we're not getting it. Damn. Who knows, maybe down the line at some point. I'm just thirsty for some 3D RTS games on console. It's been way too long. It was pretty cool, a cool show. I know Nacon Connect, they also have a game show coming out on Thursday. They're going to be publishing a new Alien survival game, a Terminator survival game, and also the RoboCop first-person shooter. That's going to be there as well.
Man, 80s fever dream. Yeah. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, like everything at the minute just seems to be like rolling off the 80s stuff. We have a new Indiana Jones film coming out. Jurassic World last year, that was doing well and stuff. Michael Keaton's going to be in The Flash. Like, we're living in the past, but hey, it's pretty cool. Yeah, we'll move on. Logan, I didn't actually have this as a topic, but I just wrote it down because I think we should talk about it, because people have been on about it recently. So, Sony recently released the PlayStation VR 2. And I've seen some talk online, and when I say some talk, I mean people directing their anger, for whatever reason, at Phil Spencer for the whole VR thing on Xbox, right? Because VR was going to be available on Xbox One X. He said high fidelity VR in a time where they needed to say something against the PlayStation 4 Pro. That was the big thing at the time, but also they were going for full 4K. And they accomplished that with the Xbox One X. It was doing 4K. Even Red Dead Redemption 2 is 4K without issue. And then they said, we're not going to do it. And I think they said they might do it with the next-gen console. And then they didn't do it. But my opinion is, I'm happy they're focusing on core content. Microsoft for years have needed to bolster their library with AAA and smaller games. Like Hi-Fi Rush, is it a AAA game? It's debatable. But I'm happy they have that, and they may not even have that if it wasn't for the whole, investment thing. And I think it's important for them to invest into AAA and, smaller titles. Like, we're going to be getting Starfield this year, which we'll talk about in a bit. Forza, Redfall, but we also got Age of Empires. We're going to get smaller games as well. And the topic came Sony has this VR headset. Where's Xbox's? And my opinion is, I don't think they need it. VR is still years away, in my opinion, from being perfected. I don't think we need to be Ready Player One levels of tech, but I do Reggie Fils-Aimé just said the other day that there isn't a must-have game. Outside of Half-Life Alyx, nobody's talking about any particular VR games. Yes, you have Beat Saber, which is popular, but not to the level people want. There isn't that must-have go-to game on VR yet. And maybe it's just because a wants and have-nots thing, but people are on about VR at the minute, and I honestly think Microsoft doesn't need it. What's your thoughts, Logan? Because, it is a topic we need to talk about.
Yeah, VR is an interesting topic because, on one hand, it's new technology, it's a new interface, it's new types of games to play, it adds further content to your platform and different experiences, and it different options for people to experience maybe their games but in a different way, especially if you did modes and stuff and tie-ins to established franchises or whatnot. But on the other hand, it's incredibly expensive to use or make or produce or sell or buy, and it's very niche market right now. There's not a ton of people using it. You go into a tech store or even some stores that just sell off-ends tech accessories, and I see VR sets and all kinds of knockoff stuff on sale all the time. It's just it's you hate to use the term fad, but it kind of it seems a bit like a fad right now. It's not a huge thing. I know there are people who are passionate about it and love it, and I'm happy for them. I'm glad you enjoy this type of technology in games and it brings you joy. That's what the industry should do. But I just don't think it's to a point yet to where it's feasible or responsible for a company to go all in on it for their platform. To me, the difference between Xbox and PlayStation doing it is PlayStation, for all their various things that we talk about and will talk about that we're not fans of, they, at least for the most part, seem to have their house in order. And they were coming off a generation that they won handedly. They were doing very, very well. And so they're like, okay, we will devote some resources to a more niche type of technology, a nascent type of gaming, and see if it'll take off and do well. So in that instance, I can understand why they're trying it. But for Xbox itself, I don't think this is something you should touch until your house is 100% in order. You have AAA hits coming at a regular cadence. You don't have all these articles coming out worrying about management of studios or games getting delayed or misled promises, or you're currently fighting for a acquisition across the globe and fear mongering about nascent markets and technologies with cloud. Like, you think cloud is a trigger for these regulators? Look at anything VR. They flipped out when Facebook bought a small little VR company that was for fitness apps and stuff. So imagine if Xbox was trying to acquire or do something involving VR tech. That would be even more of a head case for them to deal with. And then, frankly, I wonder how feasible and usable and just ready tailor made the tech is for common consumers. Like, the stuff gives me a migraine personally, so I just don't do VR. But like until they get a more streamlined focus, better games, and Xbox frankly just has more issues to worry about now that are more important than VR in my opinion.
Yeah, man, you're right because like let's look at Connect, right? Connect sold over 20 about 30 million units, right? It was the biggest hardware launch of all time, even going up against the iPod and iPhone. Like it was huge. And if you look back, all those games we got on the Connect were basically tech demos. Like all of them. There were some cool ones, but at the end of the day, it was just skeletal tracking and how to implement that into a game, and it wasn't that good. Like the tech was good, but the games weren't there. And I think it's the same with VR. The tech's cool, and it may be there, but the games aren't there. And all these like new forms of technology have to start somewhere. But people said that was Connect. And as much as I like the Connect, I think the Connect is very cool for like the dancing stuff because you could track your skeleton. There was a free game. You might actually still be able to get it for the Connect on 360 where you had to position your body to land a rover on Mars. It was free. It may still be free. I think that was the Curiosity Land Rover, and it was cool. It was cool tech, But then companies start buying Connects to use in hospitals. And apparently it's really cool tech to use in medicine, scanning skeletal structures and all that stuff. Hell, the Xbox One Connect could tell you your heart rate just by looking at you. To me, that was really cool. But like outside of a dancing and fitness app, when you're going to use it? And I used the fitness app, by the way, that launched on Xbox One. It was a very cool app. I got actually pretty healthy because of it. But like there wasn't really that AAA gaming experience there. And I'm looking at all these games on the PlayStation VR, and it's like that Horizon Call of the Wild looks cool, but it's a tech demo. That's all it is. That's all these things are. Outside of maybe Pistol Whip, Beat Saber, and Half-Life Alyx, I think it's just all tech demos. And I'm looking at the price right now, right? So the price of a PlayStation 5 in the UK is a bit weird because they raised the price last summer. So it's like in between £500 and £530 for a PlayStation 5 disc console. And on PlayStation's official website, the VR headset itself costs $569.99 if you want the bundle with one game. Now, so you're basically spending the exact amount or even more than what you paid for the console. I don't think gamers want that stuff. And it's tethered, and like I do think one day VR will get there. We will have the Ready Player One experience or something like it, but it's just not there. You have MetaQuest trying to do their whole thing with the metaverse and stuff, and it looks like an N64 game. And if anything, that's an insult to N64 games because those actually looked and played good. But I think it's something Xbox doesn't need. If anything, I think Microsoft could support VR in the future and just let third-party developers put their games on it. Because I don't want Microsoft to split their revenue, or I should say investment into... Like, think about it. Would you rather have 2 AAA games in this smaller Hi-Fi Rush 2? Or would you rather have a AAA game and a bunch of VR tech demos? Like, I can guess your answer, Logan.
The first one,
Yeah,
yeah.
like who knows? Like we wouldn't have the investment of things like Hi-Fi Rush if it wasn't for the whole Bethesda thing. Because maybe if they got into VR, they wouldn't have done that. Like the number one complaint for years was Microsoft needs to focus on AAA content and getting games out regularly, and they're still trying to get there. And they've done a lot better in the past few years. You know, they got Halo, Forts, and all that stuff out. Now, Hi-Fi Rush, Age of Empires is on Xbox. Redfall releases on Xbox in May. Minecraft Legends launches in April. And they're getting there. They're going to start putting out games every month. And then when they start putting out remasters and, like, you know, remakes for things like Gears, which will probably come at some point, Gears 2 and 3, we're going to be seeing multiple titles maybe every month. And we wouldn't have that with the whole VR thing. So my thought is they should support it maybe in the future for third-party games. But I don't want Microsoft to invest any gaming content money because it just seems like a bit of a waste right now. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we move on?
No, just that I agree. I like the idea of maybe just making it open source or open for, like, you know, an Oculus, a Meta, Samsung, whoever makes good headsets, that the Vive, if they want to, you know, have at it and make games playable for VR and give the accessories a go and make it work on Xbox, great. But they themselves will not devote time or resources to it. Like, if these third party companies can get it to work, great. We'll allow it. But otherwise, it's just not our deal.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. You know, about now at the show, just say this: if you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications; really helps the channel out. If you want to do super chats, we'll read things out, all that stuff. Oh, but speaking of super chats, we have one from the Gamer Guy 1981. Anyone else lolling at the articles that say Xbox will sell? I have to admit, Gamer Guy 1981, I laughed out loud. I was in a supermarket buying things when I saw that because I'm always on Twitter. Damn me for always being on Twitter. And yeah, that's not happening ever. Like, I think we mentioned this last week on the show. When Xbox started in 2001, at least it was 2001 in the UK or whatever, people have been saying it's going to be the end of Xbox for 20 years. I remember in the early 2000s, people like, this random company is going to buy Xbox. And then it went a few years ago. Remember last gen? Oh, Amazon's going to buy Xbox from Microsoft. And then I remember Apple was a rumor at one point. It's like, no. Like, what shocks me is that you have actual journalists with apparent journalistic integrity putting these things out. And it's shocking. Like, think about it. The billions of investment Microsoft is putting into gaming. Really think about it like this. Microsoft has invested more into gaming than any other game console creator. Ever. That doesn't mean PlayStation and Nintendo is bad, by the way, but they wouldn't invest that much money into a black hole of nothingness. Because, look, Xbox makes money. It makes more money than Surface, and it makes more money than Bing. Do you know what Surface and Bing do? Make money. So, like, it's a non question. It makes no sense. Journalists over gaming that report these things, they really need the head checked. Unfortunately, it sounds like there's something going around. Maybe it's something in the water. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Like, these people get paid to write these articles, and they don't do any research. And and here's the thing, right? These people that write these articles in their late 20s, mid 30s, early 40s, like, they've been around this whole time and seen the whole thing, right? They've seen people say for years, oh, Xbox is going to be sold off. We've lived through it, and it's never happened. And here we are in 2023, and you have these crybabies online trying to make a deal of it. And look, when you see someone from, let's say, I'm just going to use IGN as an example, or GameSpot, you can tell if that person is a PlayStation fan or an Xbox fan. Their bias does show. It's a thing. Everyone has a bias. But, like, they let that interfere sometimes with how they think. And for 20 years, I've seen this in the media where you have these journalists that grew up on PlayStation, grew up PlayStation 2, and they just never changed their preference. and then they let that bleed over a little bit into the work. It's visible. You can see, like, if you can find the tweets online of certain people from certain, I'm not going to say, but Logan, you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Oh, yeah, there are definitely some outlets that see things through a blue shade of glasses. You could say that.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. Xbox in 2013, they had a horrific unveiling. However, their E3 event in 2013 was nothing but games. They opened up with Metal Gear Solid 5. They focused on AAA hardcore gaming content. And do you know what all media outlets reported for the next 5 months after that? Their E3 was just about TV, TV, TV. That you can go online and watch it right now. If anyone maybe gets bored at one point, watch Xbox's E3 press conference for 2013. It was focused on AAA content, AAA hardcore games. And for years, even, journalists, paid by the way, were saying that their E3 was just, TV, TV, TV. And their reveal event was just TV stuff, and Connect, and TV. And this is how you use your hands to close the Blu-ray app and all this stuff. Their E3 was hardcore games. If anything, do you know PlayStation showed a Netflix advertisement in their E3 showcase that year? Nobody batted an eye. I remember these things. Some journalists just like to have selective memory because it suits them that way. And here's the thing, right? I think, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, they all have to thrive. And we are better off for it. Xbox is trying to be better. PlayStation, they will try and catch up with things like Game Pass eventually, but PlayStation's doing well. Nintendo are doing amazingly well. They're going to come out with like a Switch 2 or Pro or something at some point in the future, and that's going to sell well as well. And my point is that people are praying for the downfall of Xbox, despite the fact that we all benefit if all three are doing well. And it just saddens me that we have these paid journalists. I'm doing air quote with journalists, by the way. They have it out for Xbox. They have done for years. And this isn't a tinfoil hat thing. You just have to go online and look at it. You have VG 24/7 or whatever the hell it's called. They always have some negative article. I remember, if I can find the receipts, I'll post them later. In 2014, Microsoft put out a media player app on Xbox One that would let you use hard drives with media on, such as, movies, television, music. And Kotaku, of all places, put out an article saying Microsoft now lets you play pirated content on your Xbox One, and they had a picture of a pirate flag on a pirate ship, right? Very negative article on something that every product can do at the time. About 6 months after that, the same person put out an article on Kotaku and said, hey, guess what? The PlayStation 4 now lets you play media files. Like, same story, two different stories out of it. And it's all about presentation and context. And they did it all the time. And if you've been paying attention to Kotaku at all, they've done this for years. They've always had it out for Xbox. They've always had it. And like, Logan, you've seen this as well, right? Like Kotaku, all these places, like they blatantly have it out for Microsoft.
Yeah, there are certain outlets that are infamous for, skewing one way or another, and some particularly go very, very hard into their skew and like toxic kind of, and just ridiculous about how they cover some things. And yeah, like you said, the fact that a media player is available on both platforms, but one gets skewed as, hey, you can be a punk and you're gonna be pirating and you can play all this content and do this, or oh yeah, hey, you can play your files or whatever, cool. But then you're skewing it completely different, and then about timed exclusive and deals like that. I know this dates us and people get tired of this conversation, but Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or Rise of the Tomb Raider, excuse me, wrong Tomb Raider game. When that was timed for Xbox, a lot of outlets lost their minds. and took it so personally that their beloved PlayStation didn't have it day one. They freak out, they harass Square about it until Square finally goes, like, look, it's this long, all right? Give us a long. And then, you know, PlayStation does a deal for Final Fantasy 16 or something else, and then it's hailed as this great marketing deal or great, shrewd business move instead of, oh, this is only benefiting this platform and its fans. I'm like, wait a minute, where's the same energy for this? And then, you call these folks on these things, and they generally don't receive that very well. They block you and they move on, or they get defensive, or they say that was years ago, and different standards, or they spin it in some way to where they squirm their way out of it. There's just not a lot of accountability there. And I mean, everybody has bad takes. I have bad takes. You have bad takes. We all have our bad takes. But when you're a paid journalist and you're out there and you're viewed right or wrong as some kind of authority on something, for you to shill out stuff or put stuff that is blatantly hypocritical is just it's madness, and people don't like it. And I've noticed recently the Xbox fan base in particular, they've had it. They're tired of this nonsense, and they're going after folks. Like, kudos for sticking up. Be respectful. Don't cross lines. Don't be scary. But call a spade for what it is. And it's been interesting to see the energy lately.
Yeah, I mean, being respectful, and you can still be respectful and mention things like I like to use British sarcasm, which some people, like a lot of American journalists, do not like. So, like a while ago, these tweets are still available, by the way. So, if anyone wants to find them, have at it, have fun. Someone from IGN posted a picture of the Kinect adapter for the Xbox One S and said, oh, this is a terrible bunch of wires, it's too complicated. And I posted a picture saying the exact same thing, but replaced it with PlayStation VR. Because they never once complained about PlayStation VR wires, but they did about the Kinect adapter, which was one wire. And like someone from IGN blocked me because I actually had a point. And I have no ill will towards the dude, but like, it is what it is. And when it comes to bad gaming takes, I've had a bad take now and then. Hell, I remember once, I think this was like 2015 before E3, I got drunk, I think, at one point and mentioned how Microsoft should release a tiny Xbox 360 that would plug into the Xbox One because backwards compatibility wasn't a thing. That's what alcohol does to you. But again, you can have bad takes when you're drunk. But like the whole, like, journalists out for Xbox, and it's never stopping. It's never stopping. And it's unfortunately, it's something we kind of have to deal with. And I just hope, like, the next generation of journalists that, actually maybe have a different preference. Like, look, let's face it, when you see a journalist from IG, I'm just using IGN or GameSpot because those are the big ones, but whenever you see any journalist from those places or a personality, 99.9% of the time they are a PlayStation or Nintendo dude. Almost always. And if you look at their profiles or like their accounts on Twitter, they always like have PlayStation controls in the picture and stuff. It's like if that's where you play, that's cool. But it clearly interferes with their content. That's all I'm saying. It's very obvious, by the way, when they do this. I hope they stop, hopefully. But again, if people want to mention these things to them, be respectful. And here's the thing, if you're respectful and they block you anyway, that means you have a point. That means you win. But anyway, we'll move on. So, physical games on Xbox. Now, this is kind of a two-pronged thing going on because, one, we have small releases on Xbox not getting physical releases, such as Age of Empires on Xbox and Hi-Fi Rush. That's one prong. And the other one being third-party indie releases or smaller releases on Xbox aren't getting physical releases. And we've talked about this on the show before. Microsoft allocates, or they have a certain number that you have to hit to print to get Xbox copies made. And apparently it's pretty high, to the point where some indie developers don't want to still do that many copies. Anyway, where am I going with this? So Tunic today was announced that there's going to be a physical edition, and it's going to be available on Switch and PlayStation, but not Xbox. And I just wondering, Logan, was that a limited run games thing?
I actually don't think it was limited run. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it was. I saw it was being published, and just no Xbox version for physical. Just like, another previously timed exclusive game, Death's Door, never got an Xbox physical either.
Okay, yeah, I'm checking right now, and basically a bunch of stuff. I can't see Tunic anywhere, but it's pretty much the same thing. Microsoft, let's say you need to have 20,000 copies. I'm just throwing this number out there. It's made up. You need to have 20,000 copies minimum printed to have exist, basically. Well, on Sony and Sony and Nintendo's platforms, the number's a lot less. So I remember a story a few years ago where there's a PlayStation game where there's only like 10 physical copies. Apparently it's an absolutely terrible indie game, but there's like a tiny amount of physical copies. Well, Microsoft doesn't allow that. And people now say it's a problem. It's systemic of Microsoft's failures. I've seen it. People wrote, which is a bit ridiculous. But all in all, I think Microsoft should still support physical releases. Maybe they don't, because half of their sales, or maybe more, are from digital-only products. That's just my opinion. I know you want to talk about this, Logan, because I still buy physical games now and then, but I know you really have a proponent for it.
Yeah, my main thing is I just wish they'd get rid of the minimum requirement and just be like Sony or Nintendo, where you go hey, if you want to make physical versions of your game, have at it. I just don't see the harm in it, because collectors get them or limited run or whoever and get cool little collector items with it, or there's just something about having a physical case sometimes, and especially if it comes with a soundtrack or some other merchandise. And it's just particularly annoying when it's either a first-party title or a first-party IP or a game that was exclusive at one point on your platform to not get a physical version of it when everybody else does. It seems goofy and outdated concept to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one of these issues that I think it's one of Xbox's big things that they need to fix and would take ages to fix. I think this is just a policy that needs to change. I don't really see it as a big issue. For instance, Star Wars The Force Unleashed. Screw it, we'll use Knights of the Old Republic. Released on Xbox in 2005, and you can play it on Xbox One X and Series X in 4K, right? Pretty cool, right? Because it's a backwards compatible feature, and it's good to have. I play enhanced games all the time, and it brings new life to them. Well, the widescreen port with trophies and stuff, came to Switch, it came to PlayStation, but not Xbox. And from what I know, that on Xbox, you can't release ports of already released games. So, for instance, Control on Xbox One, released in, I think it was 2018 or something. That basically got an upgrade, and it was sold differently on Xbox Series consoles. It's called the Ultimate Edition or something, and it's basically the same game, looks better. That's a different thing. Basically, limited runs games and all these ports they put out are literally ports. They aren't called remasters. And Microsoft's thing, from what I've heard, is that you can't release a game that already exists on the store because it's literally a port. If they called it, let's say, Knights of the Old Republic Remaster, as far as I know, they could sell it. But that's not a thing on Xbox. And I think that's just another one of these things they need to fix, because I guarantee you, Knights of the Old Republic, widescreen, achievements, would sell on Xbox. But we don't have that. Logan, You love Knights of the Republic. Would you buy that on Xbox just for the widescreen and achievements?
100%. It's my favorite game of all time. I would 100% buy the Steelbook edition with the widescreen and the achievements, all that. 100%.
Like that generation of games, we don't have achievements. So like I think a lot of people would be willing to buy these ports. And as far as I know, like the resolution, by the way, on those ports is lower than what Microsoft offers through backwards compatibility. But again, it's a port, so that's another policy I think they need to change. And it just came out today that Postal 4 is not coming to Xbox. Now, Postal is an extremely violent FPS. Violent beyond belief. As far as I know, the first game was banned in half of Europe. And apparently it's not even good. Like, the last game was voted one of the worst games ever made. But it's going to make headlines because it's banned. And it's not allowed on Xbox. I can't say it on the channel because I don't want to get demonetized or anything, but like there's a game that released on Xbox last year where you can do some pretty violent things. It was this certain scene from this game was not allowed in the PlayStation version. So that it's got to tell you like how violent Postal 4 has to be to not be allowed on Xbox.
Yeah, okay, I know the game you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
and like that was allowed on Xbox, but not this. And Postal is a very extremely violent game. You can't even find proper gameplay of it most of the time on YouTube anyway because you can't make money on it, and it's again super violent. But again, crap game, and just like that. And I think it's because the public, we aren't actually knowledgeable of what Microsoft's policies are. We don't know about what content can be put on the platform or can't be put on the platform. Same with Sony and Nintendo, really. We just don't know these policies. I wish these companies could tell us, but maybe there's some legal stuff or whatever. But yeah, so basically, the port situation needs to be fixed. The limited amount of physical games printed needs to be lowered. Like, I can't imagine it being a bad thing to just have more physical releases of smaller titles. Maybe it's to stop inflation of, because you're going to see these people sell these games on eBay for hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars. It's going to happen eventually. But yeah, those issues need fixing. I think that those are just policy things. My big one is the port thing. Like Star Wars: The Force Unleashed on Switch is literally a thing. And apparently that's the PlayStation portable version. It's not the best version, by the way. The best version's from Xbox 360 and PS3, but the fact that like that would probably be on Xbox if it wasn't for the whole port thing. But yeah, if people want these things fixed, you voice them to the company and be respectful. Because look, if you're disrespectful to someone online who's a professional or anyone in general, they will either mute you or block you. If you're respectful, chances are they'll listen. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we move on?
No, like the last thing I would say is as far as like the censorship or games policy, like if ID at Xbox or whoever's in charge of that or global publishing would just like put out a statement or put out a like list of criteria or something out there for everybody to see and go like, look, this is the kind of stuff we will not allow on our platform. Or, we're checking for this criteria to allow it or not. Like, if they would just do something as simple as that, just be more transparent, I think people would be more understanding than, okay, why does this hyper-violent game get approved, but this one doesn't? Or this one has all kinds of jokes and content that some people would find very offensive, yet it's allowed and this other one isn't. Like, what is the criteria, what is the standard? Just if they would just be more open about their policy, because the fact that they're not open about their policy just irritates the fan bases of different games, and then they get mad at leadership and they're like, hey, we're not hearing from you, all we see is you block all these things, we never know why, and we never know, could we expect a game or not to come to the platform? and whether we should waste our time wanting games or know if these publishers will ever come to the platform, yada yada yada. If they'd just be more open about it, I think people would be way more understanding and would just move on.
Yeah, but again, people online, if you want things to change, just be respectful. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, Logan, we talked about this last week, and I think a lot of people are annoyed because it's going on today still. So the Xbox Series S exists, and people are blaming it still.
It's a potato.
Yeah, the Potato S. And here's the thing. They're blaming it, and I've seen huge YouTubers, by the way, huge content creators, still blame the S. I've seen Digital Foundry blame the S. However, here's a caveat. I haven't seen a developer actually blame the S. At all. And a lot of these games that people are judging are going to be available on lower spec PCs than what the Xbox Series S is. So what the hell's going on? Hell, Hogwarts Legacy, that's going to be put on the Switch in June. Like, we're not talking about what it looks like, but like that's a beautiful game, and it runs on the S, it looks great on the S, and these endless articles are coming out, and these people making content. Like, I don't like naming names, but people posting content today and yesterday, videos about how the Xbox Series S is holding games back. That just isn't the case. And it all started, well, it's been going on for a while, but like Baldur's Gate 3. That was the catalyst for at least this past month. Baldur's Gate 3 was announced to come to PlayStation. It's already been on PC and beta for like a year, I believe. And that's a CRPG coming to PlayStation, and they are all hyping it now. By the way, Logan, have you ever seen a PlayStation fan on Twitter ever talk about CRPGs up until Baldur's Gate 3?
Now that you mention it, I haven't heard too much enthusiasm from that genre by then.
Yeah, weird, isn't it? Like, no hype over the genre whatsoever. Nobody wanting the game to come over, but the fact it was on a PlayStation showcase, they want it. They love it. They are huge fans of the game, all of a sudden. They have profile pictures from the characters in the CGI trailer. But now they want the CRPG. Just a note, by the way. I just noticed that. Sorry. Anyway, where am I going with this? Well, apparently the Xbox version is still in development, and literally the developer wrote on Reddit the reason why. They're having technical issues with the split screen stuff. So, people, again, on Twitter, start making grandiose things made up, saying that the Xbox Series S is the reason this is not happening. There are other RPGs with split screen that are available on Xbox with the same engine. I believe the Divinity series you can play in split screen. Same engine. And there's no issues there. And all these content creators are now blaming the S for these technical issues. Bear in mind, it could just be an engine thing. There could be many issues that we just don't know about. But this developer had to actually correct people on Twitter. Literally had to correct people, saying that it's not the S's fault and that they didn't say that. And I've seen, again, I don't like naming people, but big content creators are just making content about the S because apparently that's what's to blame now. Logan, like, what's your thought? Because this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, it's the low hanging fruit. Okay, who can we blame today? Like, easy target, the S. Like, when in doubt, blame the S for everything. And then people just accept it. They go, oh yeah, of course it's the S. Stupid Microsoft, they made 2 SKUs. Of course there's a problem with development. How couldn't they have just been like Sony and made one? See, it's all their fault. It's all because of the S, and it's such a bad thing. And it's like, you get what you paid for, it's cheaper, and just all kinds of just dumb stuff that's not even accurate. And yeah, like, one of the leads on Baldur's Gate came out and was like, look, it is not the S that is the problem. It is something else in development that is the problem for it. We are working on it. We can get it done. We'll get it done, and we'll get it out there for Xbox. But the Series S definitively is not the problem. Okay, so you have one of the heads at Larian, the studio making it, coming out and saying that. then it just gets glossed over and they go, ah, well, that's just some guy. Let's talk about how the S is the problem. I'm like, did you not just see what the person who's in charge of this just said? It's not the problem. It's just people searching for narratives and clicks. Like, people are shameless for clicks. Like, clout and clicks. It's like, I don't know. It gives some people a dopamine hit or something because they are just shameless about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like people are just so angry about the S for some reason, and it makes no sense. Like about a week and a half ago, I put out a post on about how the S has more 120 frames games than the PlayStation 5, and that's for a few reasons. But if people ever get bored, read the replies to that post. It's just people saying, well, yes, you can play more games at 120 frames per second at 480p. It's like, that is blatantly not the case. Like, one of my mates who's obsessed with performance and stuff, right? He got a Series S. He has a Series X now, but that's for a bunch of different reasons. But, like, he got a Series S, he plays Call of Duty at 120 frames, and he loved the thing. And that's that. But, like, the Series S is a capable console. And here's the thing, we still have games coming out multi-platform that are going to be on last-gen consoles. There's last-gen games, by the way, that have been announced that's going to come out in 2025. Really think about it. Like 5 years after the launch of the new-gen consoles, there's still going to be support for that gen, right? Resident Evil 4 Remake. Do you know what that's available on? Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5. So if that game has any issues on any level, do we blame the S or do we blame the PlayStation 4 version? We're going to see this endless cycle of stuff because, like, Hogwarts Legacy, people blame the S. It's coming to last gen. It's like the Series S is better than the One X purely based on its CPU, by the way. You know, it still has a good GPU, but the Series S is a capable console. And I think, like let's rewind the clock to the beginning of, 2020 when all these games were being in development. If Microsoft released a digital Xbox Series X and a regular Xbox Series X, like, people would just be making up a different reason to argue and complain. And I think it's just another thing for people to whine about. Like, really think about it. Like, if this whole thing is successful and developers like it, Microsoft will do the exact same thing next generation. There'll be two different consoles, one more premium than the other. That's just going to be how it is. And, like, look at PCs. How many different versions for PC do developers have to, scale for? Because if you go on the Steam top used list when it comes to, like, people's hardware, people are still running graphics cards of over 10 years ago at under 720p. So it's like, where does it end? Do we just blame the S over anything now? And to see professionals blame the S when no developer has, I've never seen a single developer blame the S. There was that one artist on Rocksteady's new game. That was a bloody artist that called it a potato and started it all. And I think it's just another thing for fanboys to run with. And by the way, the Series S prints money. There's people that bought that thing just as a Game Pass box. And it worked in Microsoft's favor. It's going to continue to work in Microsoft's favor. But while the Series X is more for me because I want the disc drive, I want the full 4K and all that stuff, the Series S is a great console for a lot of people. Plus the fact that, have you seen those clips, Logan, that where people have them, like, underneath the desk upside down?
Yeah, it's crazy. It literally just like a media player just attached, to your desk and ready to go. Or you can be like Phil and have one of those mobile screens attached to it on the go. It's a really good console.
Yeah, it's a pretty versatile thing. Anyway, we'll move on. We're about an hour and a half into the show. Again, if you're enjoying it, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Have more content coming out this week, which I'll be talking about at the end of the show. Super chats are live if you want to do all that stuff. Anyway, so it turns out Microsoft is really interested in buying Activision, and they keep going ahead with it. And with everything going on with the FTC and the CMA, blah, 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 Sony has to literally give the FTC and the CMA basically all the documents that list all their ongoings with third-party exclusivity content that goes towards games and games not allowed to be put on Xbox Game Pass, which is extremely juicy because as gamers, we don't know this stuff. We can just talk about it. And this is literally some of the most sensitive information that Sony absolutely does not want the public to know. Or Sony, or Microsoft, because this is going to work in Microsoft's favor to the point where I think it's going to push them over the edge and let the whole thing happen. And Logan, I know you've been following this whole thing more than me, but like this is some really sensitive information where we could actually hear about, like, again, it's just a rumor. BioShock, the next one, has been rumored to be a PlayStation exclusive for a year. We could possibly see these things in this document.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, it's only 4 years of data, or back 2019. They had wanted back to 2012, which would have been amazing. Have that whole PS4 generation of exclusives, but the fact that they get at least till 2019, that's plenty of data to show that, look, they have a blatant and transparent policy of paying to keep things off of other platforms, whether it's fully through exclusivity or timed exclusivity, or do not put this on Game Pass exclusivity, or hey, you've heard how much we love COD and can't live without it. Just to screw over, this other thing, we're gonna get a mode to where it's only on our platform for a month, or permanently, or exclusive skins and missions, and just they have a whole bunch of policies that are exclusive focused in one way or another. And so the fact that they have been crying foul about, oh, we could be deprived of this or that, when they have a track record well established of doing this themselves for decades, it's comical. And this is the epitome of the mess around and you find out meme. Just if they had just been quiet and just not voiced opposition to this deal, or had just been less vocal about it and trying to globetrot the world as with Jim and his little jet plane trying to kill the deal, and this probably wouldn't have come up. But it has. They've made it an issue, and it could royally come back to bite them. Maybe it could theoretically, if the regulators are fair and just-minded, it could cause problems for exclusivity in general going forward for these types of deals. It could really come back to bite them. So this is one of those be careful what you wish for kind of things.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention this, but I will anyway. There's someone in chat, Darth Seth, said buying exclusive is different from owning the whole thing. You are right, but you're kind of wrong at the same time. What's right? Owning something and having it exclusive, or paying to keep something off someone else's platform despite the fact it's third party. Because guess what? Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's a third party game, but Sony pays to keep it off other platforms. Yet if Microsoft wants to have Starfield, their own game, which they paid for, that is exclusive. Which one's worse? Owning a thing and having it being yours, or paying it to keep it off someone else's platform? Because we can either say both things are wrong or both things are right? I think Microsoft owning a studio or a company or whatever, they have their games exclusive. Because guess what? Other companies have their games exclusive. Shocker. Nintendo, Mario, exclusive to Switch. Shocker. Last of Us, although not a fan. Last of Us, God of War, all that stuff. That's exclusive to PlayStation. And guess what? Those studios, publishers, Sony's bought most of their studios. Yeah, people just like to bring up the Activision thing. People put Sony on this pedestal to the point where they look past it all the purchases in the past. Like, they bought Insomniac Games. Granted, they were making PlayStation games for years, but we can't just use the term organic when it suits us. Because do you know what else is organic? The Bethesda purchase. Microsoft has worked with Bethesda, since the 90s when they were making PC games, and then with the Xbox with Morrowind, and then with Oblivion on Xbox because that's where it launched first, and Skyrim, well, that actually worked on 360, but you get my point. So it's like, how is paying to keep games third-party exclusive good? Yay, happy face, okay, but paying for a studio to keep your game exclusive is bad. That is the most backward thinking I have ever heard. Sorry, but it makes no sense. And here's the thing. Do you know how many people on Xbox would buy Final Fantasy VII Remake if it was available? Probably millions. We'll probably never find out. And, like, if Sony wanted to buy Square Enix, hypothetically, and they owned Square Enix, the assumption would be that they have their games exclusive. That's how it works. And just because, you know, like, Logan, you have to admit that's a bit stupid, right? Buying a studio to have your game exclusive is bad, but paying to keep third-party content off a platform and off Game Pass is okay.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, hey, I went to the store and bought a bag of candy, and, you know, I own the candy, and I can do with the candy as I want. If I want to share it, you know, give it to everybody, multi-platform candy, I can, or I can just keep the candy to myself. But, you know, but Tommy over here, he he pays John to not allow Mike to have candy, and it's just, it's ridiculous. It's a policy. I get it. It's business. You know, if you want to call into ethics, whatever, about business is business. But one certainly just does feel a little grimier than the other.
And here's the thing, right? I was a PlayStation fan before I was an Xbox fan. I played PlayStation as a kid. OG PlayStation. I got it for Christmas. At least I think it was Christmas. Or it felt like Christmas. Either way, it was a win. I got a shiny new console as a kid, and it was amazing. It played CDs, which felt new for a console, and it was like cool, right? And I remember playing games on that console, and they looked terrible. Right, Gex the Gecko, love that game, looks terrible. Every game on that console looks terrible, but they were amazing. But most of those games, they money hatted to have it exclusive on their platform. I remember that as a kid. I was there. And it's happened. It happened for a long time. Remember the PlayStation 2 generation? They paid to keep a lot of games off other platforms. But that was the nature of the beast back then. It was expected. But the second Microsoft starts buying studios, it's looked at as a bad thing. No. It's the opposite way around. Paying to keep content. And here's the thing, right? People have asked us multiple times. Why isn't Resident Evil 8 on Game Pass? It's because Sony paid to keep the game off there. Like, you can't say that's not shady. Because people like to say, what if Microsoft does this? We're not doing ifs or buts or candy and nuts, right? We're going off reality. We know what's what. Microsoft has not paid to keep any game from PlayStation Now. But Sony's paid to keep games off Game Pass. Right? We can all agree that is shady AF. Right? But we're going to be finding out all this stuff. And, like, in an ideal world, we'd get all games on all platforms all the time. You'd be able to play Pokemon Scarlet on your Xbox or PlayStation. That ain't going to happen. We know the reality of the situation. We know about exclusivity owned by, platform holders. But, yeah, it's stupid. The amount of reasons people make up and try and defend Sony. Again, I was a PlayStation fan probably before some of these people were born. I had a PSP. Bloody hell. I love that thing. But, again, that's a story for another day. And I just think, like, once all these stories come out, the Activision thing will go through. It looks like the Activision thing will go through. And, we'll see things like Call of Duty on Nintendo. Although the CMA claims that game can't run on Nintendo, there's a cloud version they could have. There's Call of Duty Mobile, which I've played. It's pretty decent for a mobile game. But they can do a myriad of things. They can launch Black Ops, the first one, on all platforms, and it'll work fine. They could do anything. Logan, you saw that, right? How, apparently the CMA were concerned that Switch couldn't run COD.
Yeah, it's another one of those uneducated things. It's like, why are these people who don't know anything about the industry somehow hold the fate of something this massive in their hands? And they get swayed by Sony to see things in a certain way of light. And it's like, look, this is can't be further from the truth. It might not be, a native version or something like that, but they can do a cloud version. Or they can port a whole bunch of the older Call of Duties. Like, they haven't had a Call of Duty game since Ghosts on the Wii U, like back in like 2011. It's been well over a decade since they've had any Call of Duty games, period. They would be thrilled with a whole bunch of older ones just dropped on there. Or cloud versions of some of the newer ones, or the mobile, or, you know, slightly revised. Like, they can get Call of Duty running. They have Doom Eternal running on Switch. They can get Call of Duty on Switch. It might not be the most pristine experience, but they can get it done. And, if you look at the statements and everything, it's pretty clear that it says Nintendo platforms. It's not necessarily only the Switch. They're probably thinking ahead to Switch 2 or Switch Pro or whatever they call it. The point is the fact that they're trying to separate Nintendo itself, one of the biggest gaming power in the world, as not relevant in the gaming market. First off, that's ridiculous. And then the fact that they're trying to do that and say the Switch isn't a premium console, and the fact that, oh, it isn't a premium console, and it can't even play this game that you're trying to say you're bringing to it. It's just, it's more and more just trying to tailor an argument to fit a narrative instead of going with what is facts based in reality.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you think about it on Switch right now, there isn't a traditional military first person shooter with multiplayer. I think the only one that's on there is, I think it's Modern Combat 5, which is the Call of Duty ripoff. And it's basically a mobile title, but like, I think Nintendo fans would love to finally have Call of Duty back on the platform. It's been way too long. And I think they could easily get it to work. Like you said, Doom Eternal runs on the thing. And Doom Eternal looks pretty good on the Switch. So yeah, I don't think it's a matter of like if, it's just a matter of when. But yeah, I'm leaning towards this deal happening. What about you, Logan? Because like, it's been a long journey, and it looks like maybe it's coming to an end.
I think the deal gets done. I think in the U.S. they would win in court if it comes to that. I have a feeling they'll settle and they'll make it to where it doesn't go to court. But if it went to court, based on the laws of today, not the laws that they wish were in place, but the laws of today, I think it would pass. And I think it will. And then going over to the EU, they seem to be level headed. And I can't remember her name, so I'm not going to say it and butcher the name. But the head of the European Union's competition community, she had an interview, and she was very level headed and pragmatic and said, our goal is not to chase passion and, try to curtail things. Ours is go based on the laws and what we think is going on and fits these certain criteria. And that she kind of took some shots at both the CMA and the FTC. She mentioned market capture, where, for example, Sony has absolutely ensnared the CMA with their market capture type talks. And like, CMA almost came off like a press statement from Sony, like in some of their findings and stuff like that. Not saying it is, but it was just like, huh, those are like very Sony talking points. And then talking about how we're not going to rush this out the door like the FTC did, or try to just be like all in against tech because tech is bad. Like, that's the passion statement. And so to me, it seems like they're level headed and they're going to pass it, especially with the Reuters article that came out saying they will accept the concessions that Microsoft has offered about the Nvidia deal and Call of Duty stuff with Nintendo and everybody else, along with a few other things, and they'll get it done. And then Microsoft has proposed an idea, which I think is a brilliant idea, that they used for their LinkedIn deal to get it approved over in Europe, that they would pay themselves, not the government, they would pay themselves a third party entity to manage and oversee their business operations of the Call of Duty franchise and stuff. That, like, look, this company is watching us like a hawk and they're making sure we're up to standards or not. You don't have to devote any resources to it. We will pay for it ourselves. So, to me, a neutral third party that is hired to oversee and make sure things are up to snuff is a very reasonable, pragmatic, and easy solution to this problem. And if the CMA is reasonable and rational, I think they will come to the same conclusion and go with it. If not, all is not lost. They can appeal to a higher court in the UK. It is not game over, man, if the CMA says no. That has been some things that have been misconstrued and thrown out there, that if CMA says no, deal's dead. That's not accurate. They can always appeal or go to a higher court if necessary. It's not game over, it's just more annoying and potentially a problem where you have to choose between UK market or deal or yada yada, but that's down the line. Point is, I think it's going to go through, so relax.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to address this, DarthSeth24. You're flooding the chat with crap. Stop it. Stop it. Just stop. My chat's normally awesome, and you're just doing a flood of arguing with yourself. Anyway, we'll move on. Actually, I'm going to roll every topic we have left into one thing. So Microsoft and a lot of the industry seem to be focusing on single-player content. Over the past few months, we've seen about a dozen, 24 multiplayer-centric games either be shut down or announced to be shut down, which is, it's kind of a big deal. A lot of games from mobile all the way to AAA and AA multiplayer games have been shut down. Unless you are Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, you are done. And when it comes to the live service style games like Destiny and Division, if you aren't them two games, you're done. We've seen with Avengers, Anthem, all that stuff. Unless you're those two, you're not going to get any success. And then you have EA focusing on single player content. They had massive success with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, then Star Wars Squadrons, then Dead Space, and they have Star Wars Jedi Survivor coming out, and they have a bunch of different single-player games in the works. A bunch of Marvel single-player games in the works, which is going to be really cool. And it looks like a bunch of different developers and publishers are leaning into single-player because I think they finally reached that point of thinking, we're not making any money in these multiplayer games, which we meant to support for years, because they aren't going to get support for years because nobody's bloody playing them. And we've talked about this in the past that, like, during the end of the Xbox 360 generation, you saw all these games with tacked on multiplayer modes. Bioshock, was it Bioshock 2, Logan, that had a multiplayer mode?
I can't remember. I know 2 or 3 did, and then like Tomb Raider and some other games that it didn't make sense for.
Yeah, like Dead Space 2 had PvP. It wasn't that good. Mass Effect 3, although that Mass Effect 3 multiplayer was amazing, but like that was the outlier. And then through the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 generation, it was kind of this weird limbo where some games had multiplayer modes, but it was with Fortnite, right? Fortnite changed the game with how the battle passes work and how people consume multiplayer content. We'll get into that another day. But how people absorb multiplayer content is different to how they did 10 years ago. So if you aren't one of the big names, you aren't going to get support for your multiplayer title. And like even I look at Microsoft, like it's in the title, Starfield and Avowed is the future of Xbox. Because if you look at all their games in development, about 90% of them are single player games. Most of them are single player games. They do have things like Gears that has multiplayer. They do have Halo that has multiplayer. But all the games in development right now, pretty much single player. And you look at Indiana Jones, right? By the way, in the title I have new Indiana Jones games. Someone working at Machine Games has on their LinkedIn profile that they are working on multiple Indiana Jones games. Now, as an Indiana Jones fan, I love the movies 1, 2, and 3. There isn't a fourth one. Just saying. I think the way they did the Wolfenstein games is that they're going to do the same with Indiana Jones. They'll set up a story in the first one and they'll have a narrative arc, maybe across 3 or something. And it looks like that might be a thing. In Machine Games, they've been quiet for years. They worked on the co-op Wolfenstein game, but outside of that, they've been quiet. And I think the future of Xbox is mainly single-player games. Because if you look at Game Pass, they have a variety of things. They have single-player, co-op, multiplayer. But people now more than ever are wanting focus on single-player. Bloody hell, you have EA focusing on single-player. EA, the joke for the past decade, is focusing on single-player. Thankfully, finally. And, Logan, do you see where I'm going with this? Because, for years, people have said Microsoft, they all in on, microtransactions and live service stuff. But if you look at everything, broad spectrum, it's single player.
Yeah, I love to see it. Honestly, I don't wish ill will towards the games as a service, titles. There are some that are really well done, like a Sea of Thieves or something like that. It's just not my cup of tea generally, those type of games. But I'm personally thrilled that they're going more single player focused. There used to be a reputation that Xbox was purely and solely the dude bro shooter racing box. That was it. And it was all shooters, Halo, and then Gears, and then Forza. That was it. And that's clearly not the case anymore. There was for a while also a narrative that they only made multiplayer type games. And that's clearly not the case anymore, as you're having titles like Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, Hellblade 2, other titles in the works that are coming. And so, to me, diversity is key. I want a lot more single-player games. Have a few multiplayer in there, too, so everybody can be addressed. But I'm personally thrilled that they're not sacrificing single-player narrative games just to chase an almighty dollar of engagement. I think that's for the best.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield, that is where you play PvP. And you have things like, Overwatch, but I think those hero shooters can be in its own little section. And then you have Destiny and The Division catering to that style of multiplayer. No other multiplayer really takes off. You have Fall Guys, but we can all agree, look, Fall Guys is awesome. I love Fall Guys. I play Fall Guys every week. We can't put Fall Guys in the same category. That's a very casual thing. You can play free. Same with Among Us, although that's £2. But for the most part, the money is in single player. People are looking at single player way differently than they used to 5 years ago, because everyone used to be trying to catch the Fortnite train. They wanted that Fortnite money, but nobody's getting that Fortnite money because the money's just going to Fortnite. So catering to that market makes no sense. And Xbox focusing on single player just makes sense. They can put out these big games in Game Pass, like Starfield and Avowed are going to be huge for Game Pass. Really think about it like this: there hasn't been a game like Skyrim since Skyrim. So Avowed's going to be the first game of its kind in a decade, and that game's rumored to come out late this year. It's actually, hold on, sorry, wrote it down wrong. Avowed's meant to be early next year. Hellblade 2 is going to be late this year. According to some rumors anyway. And Gears 6, right? Gears 6 is likely far more along than we actually think, because they cancelled 2 smaller games. We don't know the state of them, but there was recently an interview, I believe it was Xbox Hour podcast, where Phil Spencer, his main demand for the future of Gears when they bought the IP was have it more horror orientated, because if you played Gears 1, there's about 2 missions which are fairly horror-ish, if that's a word, and then you play Gears 2 when you're going through the labs and you have all the the monsters in the tanks and stuff like that. That's a very horror-ish section, and like I think horror suits Gears really well just because how it is. And then you have Gears 4 where they're walking through the town. I think it's like halfway through the game where they're walking through the town at night, and all the wretches and stuff are coming out of the walls. That's very very horror. I mean, I can't speak now. Horror orientated. Logan, you must have seen that, right?
Yeah, I watched the Cliffy B interview with Xbox Era. It was really good. It was cool to see Cliffy on there and talk about early Gears stuff and where he would have gone and what he thinks about what they're doing. He said he bit his tongue a little bit when it came to a few things about some of the decisions they've made narratively, but he talked about what he liked and didn't. And yeah, the Phil Spencer comments, particular about horror, really reflect what a lot of fans, including myself, have been wanting. Make Gears scary again. I remember in the first one, those Krill missions were terrifying. Where you're trying to go from, you have to light a propane tank and roll it down a hill, or run to this alleyway really quick and get the light to shine. Otherwise, the swarm of grub bats are going to rip you apart. Or, you're in the factory and you see these glowing things running around and you're not sure what's happening. Or, the grub pods, or the Brumach, the Nash, or the Corpsers, and then like underground seed pod things, and just like Gears Ed itself is horrifying monsters that emerge from darkness to absolutely ruin your day. That's at its heart, Gears. And the fact that they kind of went away from that and did a little too much robots for my liking. Like, I enjoy the robots as a change, the DBs as a change of pace occasionally, missions, but like at the end of the day, like Gears to me is like focused on family, overcoming the odds, and fighting scary, overwhelming monsters. And I feel like they kind of lost sight of that third one a little bit. And I agree with Phil. I think they should focus on the horror elements.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like, I've always looked at Gears as a single player game, just because that's how I play it. I play the single player campaign, and I dabble in Horde. I don't really touch the multiplayer. But they could really lean into the horror stuff with Gears 6, because if you look at Gears 4, it had some horror stuff, a lot of action, and, with Gears 5, like, the robot stuff, people didn't really feel for. I think when you have robots as enemies in most games, it's not the same as tearing apart flesh. like chainsawing a robot in half is not the same as chainsawing a monster in half. It's just not the same at all. And like I think they should like go that route. And who knows, maybe they will, because I think the way Gears 5 ended, and with the decision you had to make, I'm not going to spoil it for people who haven't played it, but like they clearly need to do some sort of direction with the game, because the original trilogy had a full-on narrative direction. There was set pieces filled with action and then horror. Oh, I have another super chat by Soren X. Thank you very much for 427. Good show, dudes. Thanks, dude. It's always good to have you in chat. Always good. Thank you very much again. But yeah, for the new Gears like games, Gears 4 and Gears 5, I feel like there hasn't been a thematic, experience. Like, it's been action set piece, a little bit of horror in that, but like, remember in Gears 4, Logan, where you have to go through the factory and you're destroying robots for like half an hour?
Yeah, that felt like just one really glorified tutorial mission. Like I get that there was technically a narrative, but it felt more like mechanically just to push you forward to learn what new Gears mechanics are from a new studio than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Black Tusk were originally making like a stealth game for Xbox, but they put that on the back burner because they wanted to make Gears. And a lot of people that worked on the Gears trilogy now work on new Gears games. So, yeah, and plus, I don't think Gears 6 is that far out. Like, when you have hundreds of people going full into production, and here's the thing, Unreal Engine 5 is something they've dabbled with already. They've made that impressive tech demo. They helped work on The Matrix Awakens, which, in my opinion, The Matrix Awakens is better than The Matrix 4. Like, might just be me. But yeah, I think we have good stuff to look forward to. And here's the thing, people joke about Microsoft's games being far out. Like, this year they've released Age of Empires. Again, we could say that's just a remaster of 2, but like they've released Age of Empires 2 on Xbox. It's technically a remake. And Hi-Fi Rush was announced out of nowhere. And, Phil Spencer recently said in an interview that there may be a few, I'm doing air quotes, GoldenEye level announcements before the summer showcase. So, like, I think, yeah, Microsoft does have games far out. Of course they do. But I still think there's games coming sooner than that. Like, again, Redfall, it's coming out in May. There's Forza Motorsport, also coming out this year. Starfield, again, I'm just saying the June rumor, I don't necessarily believe it that much, but June is the rumor for Starfield. And, you have the smaller games like Minecraft Legends. They're going to have other small titles because they have like 25 plus studios, most of which are making multiple titles. You have Compulsion Games. We don't even know what they're making. We just know it's a third-person action-adventure game. That's it. And it might be steampunk. That's it. And Hellblade 2, that's been in the oven for years. So, yeah. But honestly, Logan, do you think, this year we're going to see some surprises?
Yeah, that GoldenEye type announcements quote really caught my eye as well when I saw that in an article. And to me, this is purely speculation. Once again, put on the caveat, CYA stuff. But like a potentially think of like a few Quake ports, or like maybe Arx Fatalis, maybe some other older type games that weren't made BC for whatever reason. Maybe they're able to get them done as a port or a remaster type thing through a Night Dive or something like that, and they make it to the platform. To me, it kind of seems like something on that scale would be what he was talking about, or maybe like a 1 versus 100 type thing, which supposedly was in the works forever. So who knows? But some fun, smaller announcements, which sounds good to me.
Yeah, honestly, you mentioned 1 versus 100. I think that could be a thing, Like, people always say for certain games, like, that's perfect for Game Pass. But a live game show where people can win prizes, I think is literally perfect for Game Pass, because they could just give out subscriptions, games, Microsoft reward points as prizes. Because if you remember, if you played 1 versus 100 back in the day, I think the number one prize was a Mini Cooper. I don't think they'd do that again with the Mini, but for money prizes, games, consoles, all that stuff, it's prime for it. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good year for Microsoft. Really think about it. So far, we have Hi-Fi Rush, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, Age of Empires 4 is coming later this year, Minecraft Legends, Redfall, Starfield, Forza Motorsport, and that's the announced things. There's still going to be things to come. And the whole rumor of the Starfield second delay, it's not a rumor. It's just something people have made up. Right? We were promised that we would possibly see a reveal event soon. And some people led to believe that it was going to be this week. Now, considering the rumor for Starfield's release was June this year, people were led to believe that's going to be a thing. And look, if they are releasing a game, a AAA RPG in June, they need to show it off now, basically, to get the the marketing thing going. And I think just give it a few weeks. If a game is delayed internally, we can't complain about it. If the game hypothetically comes out in October, what does it mean to us? It's still coming out when it's coming out. It hasn't been delayed. And plus, when it comes to a Bethesda RPG, I want them to focus on it more than ever. Because we've seen in the past, certain Bethesda games come out and they are buggy. But if they said they are focusing on polish, and they say that before the game's coming out, they didn't say that with Fallout, I believe. They didn't say that with Fallout 3. And Fallout 3, that was a bit buggy. Skyrim was a bit buggy, but yeah, I don't think people have to worry at all. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we close out?
Oh, no, just that. Agree with you that, if it was never announced for a specific month and it doesn't launch that month, it's not a delay. It's just a delay of people's expectations. And it's another one of those, be careful who you listen to and who you follow for content. And, just because it's a verified account saying something doesn't mean it's 100% going to happen. And I think it's people got antsy because there was stuff put out there that said imminent, reveal and this, and then it's 2 weeks now and there hasn't been anything. So it's another one of those that people build up expectations and they get mad and disappointed when their own expectations aren't met. Yet the company itself never put something out there except 2023. Technically, if the game came out at 11:59 on December 31st, it would still be 2023. And it would not have been delayed or inaccurate. So, until, January 1st, 2024, it is not delayed. So, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I don't think people should worry. Like, if it gets to June and we don't hear anything, I will be concerned with everyone else. But I don't really worry about that. It's going to be a good year. And plus, look at the year we've had already. For even just third-party games alone, we've had, the Dead Space remake, phenomenal. Hogwarts Legacy, phenomenal. I think people just need to calm down. People are antsy. They really want, this new big AAA space-varying RPG. It's going to happen. And, Microsoft did say that we will get a Starfield event. They're going to let us know in advance, and Microsoft tend to let us know about an event a week beforehand. That's what they did with the Developer Direct. They'll probably do that with the Starfield thing. Anyway, that's it for today's show. We went over 2 hours, which is kind of unexpected. But again, everyone in chat outside of the unusuals. By the way, on this chat, outside of the porn bots, we never have PlayStation fanboys on. Ever. Bit of a change today, but hey, I don't care. If you support PlayStation, Nintendo, or Xbox, you can be here. Just don't do the fanboying thing in chat. Anyway, we'll be back the same time next week, next Tuesday, where we'll be talking about everything about Xbox. But also, I have a video dropping tomorrow where I'm finally health issues. I'll talk about that at another point. Back to weekly content starting tomorrow. I think if people are looking forward to certain March releases, you may want to pay attention to it. Anyway, I'm out. I hope you have a good day. Peace. And we are done.